Be smart, dummy, dummy, be smart. He said that fool, you weren't cool. He took a book to your school. Be smart, dummy, dummy, be smart. Don't get shocked if you get mocked. It's what you find when you use your mind. Don't you sweat it, look 'em in the eye. Don't regret it, hold your head high. Be smart, dummy, dummy, be smart. Try to show some tenderness, even when they're playing chess. You think it's dumb to be smart, but that's the way you make art. So be smart, dummy, dummy, be smart. Use your...
Hi, I'm James Eade, and this is Change Your Mind. And I live in the divided states of America right now. One state is pitted against another, and we're just divided. And a divided house cannot stand. How do we get back to the way we can be united? And united does not mean, unity does not mean uniformity. We don't have to dress alike, talk alike, sound alike. We don't even have to think alike. But what we have to be is united on believing in life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. If other people want to pursue happiness in a different way than you do, it should be tolerated. We should be more tolerant than we have been. And to do this, sometimes we have to change our minds. And it's an inside job. We spend too much time trying to change other people's minds when it's our minds that we should pay attention to. And today I was thinking about the relations between Japan and the United States and how they have changed over time. And my perception right now may be one thing, and it might be stuck in an old pattern of thinking. So I've asked a person to come on the show today, and let me just bring him on now. Hiroki Kato, welcome to the show.
Hi.
Hi. And the reason I'm asking you to change my mind about Japanese-United States relationships is because you were born in Japan but have lived in the United States. Is that correct?
That's right.
And where were you born?
I was born in Hiroshima
In
in
Hiroshima.
1942.
Okay. So I would imagine that you're growing up, you were not fond of the United States. Is that true?
I'm sorry, I didn't catch that.
When you were growing up as a child, were you? I would imagine that you were not terribly fond of the United States.
I was actually a fan of the U.S.
Oh,
Oh yeah, because of course, you see, I was 3.5 years old when the World War II was over,
mm-hmm.
and my sort of conscious memory goes back to that era, 3-4 years old. But throughout 1940s and 50s, when the U.S. was occupying Japan under MacArthur, America looked very, very good to Japanese. America was the superior country and culture in all aspects: education, politics, social relations, products.
See, I would have thought that I would have grown up resenting them for dropping a bomb on my hometown.
No, actually, that wasn't the case.
Interesting. You've changed my
Unlike,
mind already.
unlike some other countries which were involved in World War II, Japanese was thoroughly defeated by Americans, and until the end of World War II, Japanese believed their own superiority, their own superior culture, etc.
Yes.
It was thoroughly defeated, and among other things, they believed in the military invincibility, and that was totally turned out to be false.
Right.
And so
it's a little like the lesson that Putin is learning now. Putin thought he could walk into Kiev, and he's learning that his military was maybe not as strong as he thought it was too.
Yeah, well, the Putin's plan was not. I don't know how it's going to end, or if it ever ends.
Can you shift just a little to your right? Just a little so your face is totally on the screen. That's perfect. Perfect. Oh,
Let's see. Okay.
there you go.
Better?
Yes.
Okay.
Perfect.
All
Yeah.
right.
I just want to keep your face in the totally because it was cut off there, but that's
Let
great.
me see. Okay.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
So
Okay.
I know that you wrote this book, Understanding and Working with the Japanese Business World. But you wrote that quite a while ago, and you think that times have changed since that era. Is that
Yes.
true? Okay.
Yes. The book was published in 1992,
Mm-hmm.
and that was when, as you may remember, the Japanese business was flying very high.
Yes.
The Japan
Blade
was
Runner was a
too
movie.
long, and many American business world tried to learn from Japanese method of production and providing service. And but that was 1992, and the President W. Bush, the Bush Senior, went to Japan around that time.
Oh, I remember that. Yes, there was an
As a
embarrassing
result,
incident.
because of his going to Japan, and Japan became a sort of major topic in media, my book sold pretty well then.
Good for you. Yes. Yes.
But anyway, uh, but the so I wrote this book to help the American business world to deal with the Japanese business world, which was quite intriguing at that time. Not many American companies have worked in Japan or Japanese market, so they were looking for some, advice uh, and as to how to deal with the Japanese business world. And so Prentice Hall came to me, and at that time I was teaching at Northwestern University, and so they came to me and asked me if I could write a book to help in that field, and then say sure. And so that book was written pretty hastily. In fact, it was written within 3 months.
Yeah,
Uh,
that's
but anyway,
a fast
that's
turnaround.
another book. Yeah, but the many things have changed since then. Uh, well, for one thing, Japan is no longer the uh, second the economic power after U.S. China is now.
Right.
Japan still has the Japanese GDP is still number 3 in the world, but it is no longer considered as big economic power as was in the 1990s.
Right. Yeah, and in the 1990s, I remember, that there was a sense that the Japan was going to buy everything, buy
Right,
all the real estate.
right. The
And
Japanese money bought uh, actually part of the Sears Tower,
yeah,
and the uh, uh, Japanese were buying up the properties in Hawaii and
yes, yeah,
many of
yes.
the iconic uh, buildings and landmarks, and it was creating some backlash also.
Well, how old were you when you came to the United States? You were a teacher at the Northwestern University, professor there, but
I came right after my college. I was
ah,
24 years old, and to do some graduate work. And my original intention was to go back after school, but I met a nice lady who has been who is
how
my
many?
wife
Yeah.
of 55 years now.
Has that story been told before? Yes.
So I never
Lucky
went
you.
back to Japan to live,
Uh,
although I have been back to Japan many times. So
yes, yes, I understand. Well, Hiroki, I hope this isn't insulting, but when I was a young boy, we used to think of Japan as the producer of like cheap little toys that we would play with. So that was my first, I think when I was just a child, that was my perception of Japan, was that they would make, things that I could break and replace.
yes, well. the Japanese products, including toys and home appliances, etc., had a reputation of cheap and shoddy. And uh, the image, if I may say this, or this, uh, Americans today associate some of the less expensive and somewhat shoddy products from China, and so there was that the kind of image of Japanese products, and well, in post-war World War recovery period, Japanese indeed produced many cheap toys and cheap appliances to sell to American market.
Right. So that
American uh, consumerism was really on the rise
right.
in post World War II period. Everybody wanted to buy things, and
Yeah.
the what cheap and shoddy goods happened to sell very well and profitable.
Yes.
And so that's contributed to the Japanese recovery, economic recovery after the war. And of course, and so this is image the many Americans of older generations, such as ourselves, uh, people in their say 60s and older, remember the time when Japanese products were shoddy and but cheap.
Yes.
Now that image, as we know, have changed considerably. From the end of 1960s on, Japanese products quality have really improved.
So
Also, price went
how
up.
did we change our minds? Was it because we saw that the products were more durable, were
Yes,
better, and
right.
we eventually, or was it just another generation came up and that's what they became used to? Did the
Yeah.
older generation change their mind, or did they stay? I just asking the question. I don't know what the answer is. Um,
Well, the quality of the products themselves changed.
mhm.
The what happened say, is, for example, the in mid 1960s, Americans started buying the Honda motorcycles and Toyota cars
Yes,
and Honda cars, Honda motorcycles and cars,
right.
and they when they use them, they discovered they are very well. Sorry about that. They were very well made and quite durable, and not as expensive as the U.S.
Yes,
made
yeah,
products.
exactly. I
So
remember my first car was a Toyota
yeah,
Camry, I think.
so
Yeah,
the now the perceptions began to change gradually, and the Japanese products uh, have have the quality of Japanese products have improved consistently.
yes, and so has the perception of them from the
Right.
U.S. nowadays.
Yeah, and so um, they start selling quality instead of quantity. Let's say they
Right.
changed, and the that was noticeable, and the people, American consumers, began to experience the higher quality of Japanese products. So they continued even today. Now, how in the world, how did the Japanese manage to start producing the quality? Well, this goes back actually in history. Japanese have always had a tradition of pursuing the limit of the excellence in anything, be it confectionery, uh, the all manners of Japanese cuisines, or Japanese furnitures. So if you look at the furniture produced before World War II, going back to a few hundred years to the beginning of the World War II era, they were really well made, and the
Wow.
Japanese craftsmanship was
Craftsmanship.
very good.
Yes,
So the from the 1960s, after the post-war period of some 20 years or so, Japanese began to apply the old techniques, old disciplines in manufacturing products and goods. And so it was not something really new to Japanese culture to produce high quality products. They just returned to the traditional approach to things, to
Very interesting.
perfection.
Yes.
So the and but anyway, so today the perception of Japanese products have made 180-degree turns. They are high quality and becoming more expensive.
Right. And so we can talk about just the products of Japan, and let me ask you your personal uh, experiences coming to the United States as a person born in Japan. Um, how were you received? Did you find that people, because there was internment camps in World War II. Yeah, I mean there must have been some kind of resentment that you experienced, or some not maybe not as accepting as you would have experienced, but you became a professor of a noted university, so obviously you coped with it well. But did you have those experiences?
Well, I have never really experienced the overt hostility or overt prejudice in uh, because I have spent most of my time, uh, earlier time in America in academic community, which
Yes.
tend to be very liberal and more tolerant.
How
And
interesting.
the,
Yes.
I didn't encounter the really overt prejudice, but that is not to say I haven't encountered some, uh, uh, sort of some prejudice. Um, let's see. I'm trying to remember some of the specific examples.
Well, it's not how about I ask the question this way: if I was from the United States and I came over to Japan, how would I be received if I was coming to be a graduate student in Japan?
You'll be perfectly welcome. Japanese have a cultural tradition of uh, treating the stranger well. The guests are always treated very well. In fact, the guests are often treated better than family members. So you be known as gaijin, which means foreigner, but
Yeah, yeah.
so the foreigners have actually very good time in Japan, and this is quite different. The uh, that than in the European countries. After World War II, some Americans before they came to they visited Japan, they have apprehension. They must hate us because
I opened the
US
show with that. Yeah,
treated the Japanese.
yeah,
In fact, they, most people experiencing the totally opposite.
right.
The you are a guest, so you know
Yeah, my cousin went and spent a lot of time there, and she reported having a great time and being welcomed. And so, what you're saying is really not surprising to me, but it's a definite difference in the two societies, because we're experiencing now more than ever, I think, some resistance to immigration, to people coming, and the idea of taking away American jobs and that sort of thing. There's not as although you can find communities that are very welcoming, very fair still to this day. It doesn't matter what country you're from or what language you speak, you're welcome. So
I hasten to add this notion though. As long as you stay as guests, as long as you stay as foreigners, you are treated well. But
ah,
once you want to become a native, that is, say, if you start acting like Japanese, try to be Japanese, it's it's different.
Gotcha.
Uh, then you have to become a perfect Japanese in order to be acceptable. That is to say, you have to speak very good, perfect Japanese.
Flawless.
You
Yes.
have to conform to Japanese mannerism, and clothing, etc., etc. So it's not easy to become
You're judged
great.
by a higher standard, I would imagine.
Now, in this instance, there's a huge difference. American culture, American society has always sort of welcomed uh, the immigrants and foreigners as well. I shouldn't say not everybody, of course, but have welcomed the foreigners as though they are members of like everybody else,
Right.
and at least that is
That's when we're at our best.
the norm.
Yeah.
And so uh, and you know uh, you can't, so you are not you don't stay as guests for a long time, even if even if you stay foreigners stay a month in the US, you have to, you know you are treated like an American, and I mean, you can't even tell who is foreigners, who is foreigners. But uh, on the one hand, you are treated like equal person. On the other, you have to really uh, perform that like an American. In Japan, as I said, if you're a guest and you make a lot of mistakes, errors, they are tolerated as long as you're a guest.
As long as you're a guest. Yeah.
Yes. I don't know
Very
whether I have explained this clearly, but
No, that I think you just did a great job of explaining. I learned a great deal from that. And now the other question that arises now is because Japan and the United States have been politically well aligned in recent times, um, and with Japan going from like the second leading GDP to third, is there any kind of like does Japan have a feeling that America pushes its weight around too much politically and economically? Is there any kind of feelings on the part of the Japanese that the United States is a friend, but kind of like a friend that you wish would change certain characteristics, maybe to be a better friend?
well, uh, the foreign relations, that is American and Japanese relationship, has gone quite a few major changes.
Yes.
In that the when the war was over, or when MacArthur came to Japan, the it essentially imposed the MacArthur essentially imposed the so-called peace constitution in Japan. Nominally, the Japanese wrote the constitution, but the reality is that the uh, Japanese constitution was written by MacArthur's uh, government.
Imposed on them.
And Article 9 of constitution, Japanese constitution, says we shall never arm. We shall not depend on armed forces for peace. That is, the Japanese were completely disarmed. All the military equipment facilities were destroyed. And Japanese were not going to have any armed forces. And and this was a reaction to what Japanese did to the U.S. and to the world. Well, what changed was when Korean War happened, and America was heavily, of course, involved in Korean War. The the U.S. wanted Japan to begin to arm,
Mm.
But the Japanese refused to do that. So Japanese was not involved in the Korean War at all, except in some secret manner.
Hmm.
The Japanese gained um, economically from Korean War because the Japan was very close to, geographically close to the Korea, so the war material produced in Japan uh, for the American forces fighting in Korea was a great economic boom, created great economic boom. It helped the recovery of Japanese economy. Um, so the U.S. kept pressuring Japan to arm. Japanese kept refusing it. Now the the Japanese actually began to have the military, although Japanese had never sent the Japanese military out outside of Japan, only to protect themselves. In fact, they call it self-defense force, and the even self-defense force is, if you just stick to the letter of the Article 9 of the Constitution, is unconstitutional.
Hmm.
Somehow, Japanese society has begun to tolerate more and more. But yet, majority of Japanese are still against sending troops to fight in foreign war, only to guard themselves. Uh, However, this has begun to change in the recent decade because of the rise of North Korea and the rise, tremendous uh, strengthening of Chinese uh, military.
Yes.
And so the
There's
Japanese,
more uncertainty now.
yes, and the North Korea, after all, have been testing the missiles.
Missiles.
Some of the North Korean missiles fly over Japan and land in the Pacific,
Yeah.
and that doesn't offer any comfort to Japanese.
Right. Right.
So the some Japanese, especially uh, political politically political right, began to agitate that we should have the um, more aggressive capabilities, and
Right.
some even began to advocate the nuclear power, although it hasn't become a reality yet. And so the uh, um, U.S. has been pressuring Japan and South Korea to strengthen their military capability
Right.
vis-a-vis North Korea and China.
Right.
Uh,
So
and
tensions are going up a little bit.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah.
Well, I could talk to you for hours about this, Hiroki. I would like to ask you, though, we're running out of time, producers reminding me that I need to wrap up. And I would like you to tell me if there is one thing U.S. citizens could change their minds about Japan, how they think about Japan, what would it be? And vice versa. If you could tell the Japanese citizens one thing that they could change their minds about the United States, what would that be? Could you do that for me?
Well, that's a very interesting question. I have to think a little deeply and carefully. Uh, yeah, the U.S. should not be treating Japan as though they are sort of they can be manipulated into serving the U.S. interest. Uh, that is to say, the Japanese do have the sense they want to be more sort of so we said independent thinkers. They
Yes.
they want to have their own. Well, the many of the major decisions throughout the post World War II period have been actually uh, been created by the U.S. That's a perception Japanese have, and to a great extent, that is probably true. But so the Japanese have been sort of wanting to make more decisions in terms of international relationship on their own, and not really being dictated by the Americans. Now, what the Japanese say to Americans, well, um, Japanese have a hard time understanding why the what was once the shining light, shining city on the hill has become such a violent, uh, ridden, and the politically divided countries. The um, From the Japanese
I
viewpoint,
wonder that too.
uh, unlike the until the say end of 1960s or so, when America looked really a great country, great society, it has changed. The America doesn't look like a shining city anymore. And having said that, Japanese have to understand there are some great social progress made in the U.S. Is uh, you know incomparable in the world, such as women's liberation and the uh, same-sex marriage, etc., or the even the uh, race relationship. Despite the problems, America is the only country, I mean, where the issues have been confronted openly and the progress has been made. And that's the kind of thing the Japanese quite don't quite understand. So the
Well,
well,
thank you, Hiroki, for that wonderful and well thought out answer to it. I just uh, uh, kind of surprised you with that question, I know, and it was not fair of me, but you did a great job answering it. And thank you so much for being on the show. I really appreciate it. And it's
thank you for inviting me. I
you're
enjoyed it.
okay, Hiroki. I'm going to take you backstage now. And that was Hiroki Kato, and helping me change my mind about Japanese-United States relations. And I hope that was useful for not just myself, but for all those viewing members out there. And thank you for watching this week's episode of Change Your Mind. And the Roman god Janus in my lower left-hand corner is going to be replaced by a more modern version, because we can change our minds. And just remember, every weekend is a new beginning.